Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to walk you through how to set up a one-page booking website using WordPress, Elementor, and a plugin called Simply Schedule Appointments. We'll cover everything you need to get started as you begin working with your new website. So here in my tutorial, I've already set up a website under mydomainaddress.com, and I've actually already set it up with my hosting, which I'm using SiteGround for this. Anyway, this video is really for anyone who's starting a new business, and needs to take appointments and doesn't have a website yet, and wants to move away from traditional platforms like Calendly or Acuity due to some of their limitations. I put together a quick little comparison chart here. Pretty much the benefits of having your own website is that it's completely in your control when it comes to all the styling, all the branding, and then owning all of your appointment data. You don't have to worry about unexpected expenses, and it's much cheaper to begin with than other platforms like Calendly or Acuity. So after you set up your website and your domain, here's a quick snapshot of the back end of my SiteGround account. As you can see here, I have my domainaddress.com already set up. So after I open this, I'm going to be taken to a dashboard just like this one right here. And the first thing that you want to do is go ahead and install the plugins that you need. So right now, if I head over to the plugins page, we'll see that we have only the basic default plugins that come with SiteGround. But I'm going to go ahead and install my two plugins that I'm going to need for this tutorial. So I'm going to need Elementor. I'm going to type in Elementor. I'm going to install this one, that first one that comes up. And so Elementor is a page builder. It lets us manipulate our web pages and lay them out exactly how we want. And so after activating the plugin, they'll walk you through a few different steps. If you have an Elementor account or if you purchase this plugin, you can go ahead and sign in here, but let's go ahead and just skip it. And now it wants you to install the Hello theme plugin, which I will go ahead and click continue because I do want to use their theme. Now I'm going to give my site a name. So for this tutorial, I'm actually going to be setting up a wedding photographer's website's booking page. And what she does is she actually goes to weddings and takes photos through Polaroid. This fake business is called Faded Memories. So let's go ahead and click next. And now it's asking me to upload my logo. So let me click Open Media Library. And what I want to do is I'm going to actually upload the files. And it's just a emoji. So I'm going to click select, and I think that looks good. So I'm going to click next. And now it's going to ask me if I want to go ahead and use one of their templates or if I just want to start on a blank canvas. So I'm going to go with the blank canvas. Alrighty, so here is my first Elementor page. And just to give you a quick rundown of how the Elementor editor works, here on the left-hand panel, you'll see all the Elementor editor settings. And you'll see that this is the elements panel, and this is going to let you drag and drop different elements, for example, images, text, buttons, icons, etc. Because we're using the free version, we only have access to these basic ones. As you can see down here, these are for the pro version. But you can complete this homepage with just these elements, and it's going to look great. Here at the very bottom, you'll see we have general post settings. So you can name the page, you can set the status of it, apply a featured image, hide the title. In this case, we'll go ahead and do that. And then you can choose the different layouts. So I'm gonna choose canvas just because I would like to just remove that picture that we had at the very top of my logo. I'll go ahead and add the logo later. Going back to those post settings, you'll see that we have a styles panel, and it lets you manipulate the margins, padding, the backgrounds. You can also set advanced CSS, but again, this is just a pro feature, so we don't have to mess with this right now. Let's see, we also have a navigator, so if you click on that, you get to see a section by section breakdown of everything on your page, but we can close it for now. You also have the history tab. You can see every single change that you've made, along with any revisions that you've saved. You can also switch into responsive mode, which we'll come back to later because it's really important to switch between the different screen sizes and make sure that all your content still looks good on each device. And then you can also preview your changes, which will open a new tab for you to see what you have so far. Alrighty, so the other thing too, if you click this top left hamburger menu, this is where we're going to be working right now. This is the general settings, and so you can click the site settings theme builder and user preferences from here. We're going to be working with the site settings here in a second because this is going to set our global styles for our website. And we'll get to it here in a bit. So first thing we want to do is I'm going to go ahead and head back to my little widgets area where I can drag and drop my elements. So you just use this little grid button here at the top right corner of the panel. And I'm going to go ahead and start adding a few of my basic elements. And this is going to help me reference what I have set up when I start going through the site settings and all the global styles. So I'm going to go ahead and drop in a few different headings. So here is my first one I just dragged in. And after you drag in a element, you can always use this little pencil button here at the top of the element area. And then that will bring up all the settings for that element. You'll see some pretty standard tabs here. Another thing to help you navigate, it'll also say like what you're highlighting. So it says edit heading, so I know I'm editing this heading right here. So you'll see the content, always have a style tab, and then the advanced tab. So the content, of course, it's going to let you manipulate what you're actually showing here, as well as a few different things too, like the links, the alignments. Sometimes it depends on what element you're working with. It might be in style or in content. And then the style, of course, lets you change colors, change the fonts, strokes, etc. And then the advanced lets you set stuff like margins, padding, as well as like motion stuff, what the background is, borders, whether you want to show it on mobile, desktop, etc. But let's head back to content. And what I want to first do is I want to make sure I have a few different headings here. So I want to make sure this one is at H1. And just to give you a little bit of background, usually a typical web page is going to have a single H1 heading. And this is going to let Google search engines, or just like search engines in general, give them a good idea what this page is about. And then it starts looking for the H2s, H3s, etc. You want to make sure that you keep that same structure where you always have an H1. You can have as many H2s as you want, and then H3s, etc. But let's go ahead and add in more headings. Another cool thing about Elementor, if you right click on this little pencil tab here for the heading, it'll give you a few more options. For example, you can duplicate it, and instead of having this one since we already have our H1, let's go ahead and make this one an H2. Let's go ahead and just make another one for the H3 heading. And now instead of making another heading, let's go ahead and add some text. I think that's fine. And then we can also add in a button. I think that's about it. Let's leave it at that. So we have our three headings, we have our text, and we have our button. So I think these are going to be the main elements that I'm going to be working with on my booking page here. So now let's head over to our site settings so that we can set our global styles. Starting from the very top, let's work on our design system settings. So let's click on global colors. And by default, we have these green, gray, and blue colors, but I already have some selected, so I'm going to go ahead and pop them in really quick. Alrighty, so I'm happy with those colors, and I'm going to go ahead and click update. And now let's go back to our general site settings, and let's move on to the fonts. Alright, so now that I have my fonts ready, I'm going to go ahead and click update and head back to my site settings. And next we'll go through the theme styling. So here I'm going to click the typography option, and this is where we're going to start seeing some of these styles really take place. So for starting at the very top, body, this is going to affect the text blocks like this one. So let's go ahead and set the color to match our text, and then the typography, we want to make sure it's matching the text we selected. And you can use the little global style button right here to select some of the global settings that we just set. So instead of having to type in the hex code every single time or just find the font every single time, the reason we set those global styles in the design system settings is so that we can use these little drop downs for easier navigation. So let me just go through that really quick. All right, so since I'm only planning to work with the H1 to H3 heading types, so I'm just going to leave the H4, 5, and 6 ones as is. And now that I'm done, I'm going to go ahead and click update. All right, so going back to the site settings, next let's work on the buttons. And for the typography, I think I do want to change the color of this because the red seems a little too stark. So I'm going to change it to white. But now my typography somehow changed, so I'm going to go ahead and change that back to the accent one we had before. Going down a little bit, so I do want to change the color of these. I do want it to be red, like that. And then I can do a few other things here, like the radius. That's going to affect whether it's going to be square or if it's going to be more rounded, like this, more of a pill shape, which I think I'll go ahead and go with the little pill shape for now. You can also set the border. You can set the shadow of these. It's completely up to you. And then you can also set the hover style. So right now, if I hover on this, it's going to stay the same. But I can change that to be something a little different. So let's actually do a little blue hover. If anything, I'll probably go with the darker one. Yeah, I think that looks good. You can also set the padding for the button. So if you need it to be a little more chunkier, you can do that from here. All right, I think that looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and update it. And so this is going to set the default style for all of our buttons on the site. So anytime I add a new one, it'll look just like this. Going on to the images, you can set border radiuses for images and such from here. I'm not going to touch this. I think the images as they are is going to be fine for me. We can also adjust the form fields. Elementor does come with a form element, but I'm not sure if it comes in the, let's double check. Yeah, it's a pro feature, so we won't be able to use it for our free edition anyway. But let's go back to our site settings and continue. Alrighty, so next it's going to ask us for the header. You get to choose whether you want to include your site logo, tagline, menu. But for this tutorial, since we're just making a single booking page, I'm going to go ahead and ignore this for now. I'm going to build out the header as a part of my page instead of using the Elementor header settings. I think the header and footer come handy once you upgrade to the Pro edition of Elementor. But if you're just building a single page, we can just skip this for now. Alrighty, next we'll go through the site identity settings. And so you can review all the stuff some of the stuff that we entered during the setup wizard. For example, the name of the site logo. You can also set the favicon, which is the little icon that comes up when you open a new tab. But I'm just going to go ahead and leave these as is. Next, we can go through the background settings. And I actually do want to set a background. I'd like to set it to a nice little, like a vintage yellow. So I'm going to grab that really quick. I didn't add it to my colors, but I'll add it right here. Alrighty, so I have my background color in place. I'll probably just tone it down a little bit. I think that's a little too vibrant. Maybe something more like that is better. Alright, and I'm going to click update. You can see you can also add an image or a background specifically for the mobile, for mobile devices. But let's go ahead and go back and go through a few of these last ones. So you can choose the layout, including the breakpoints that you want to plan for. So right now it's defaulting to mobile and tablet, and the layout is going to determine how wide this content sits on your page. I'm going to leave it as is, and let's go back. We also have lightbox settings. So if you use an element that includes lightbox, you can set it from here. And then we won't touch the custom CSS, and the additional settings, I believe just opens, yeah, it just opens to a new page back here on your WordPress website, which we won't get to here. But anyway, so now that we have our site settings set up, let's go ahead and exit out of here. And before I leave this page, I do want to just leave this as an existing page. So I'm just going to leave this as my style guide page. If I ever need to make changes to my style or my site settings, I can always come back here and use it as a reference. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that here and publish it, and we can take a look at it and just see that, okay, this is how all my elements are going to look just by default. Alrighty, so going back to our WordPress back end. So to get back there, you just use this little button here at the top left corner. All right, and so the next thing that we want to do is go ahead and install our booking plugin and get that set up really quick as well before we start building our homepage. So now we'll go back to our plugins page, click add new, and we're going to similarly look up the Simply Schedule plugin, Simply Schedule Appointments. So it's going to be the one with the little fox here. And let's go ahead and click install and activate. All right, so after activating, you should have a brand new little appointments tab here on the bottom of your WordPress left-hand panel. So let's go ahead and click it. And once you open up Simply Schedule Appointments for the very first time, you are greeted with another setup wizard. So let's go through that really quick, and you'll see it's really quick to create your very first calendar. All right, so it's going to show me some of the general settings that it's auto-detecting for me. So it has my time zone, my preferred date format, time format, and some of the contact information for me. So if that looks good, I'm gonna go ahead and click this green button. Looks good, let's go. Or you can also adjust it. Next, we're gonna set up our very first appointment type. An appointment type basically just represents a booking calendar. So we're gonna go through some of the tabs here just to make sure this is set up as I want. For our wedding photographer, let's go ahead and customize this a little bit. Let's name it something like, probably lower this to 20 minutes, and we can show it on a monthly basis. And I can also include instructions. Let's go ahead and click continue. Next, in our availability, we get to choose available blocks or specific start times if you're picky about when you specifically want to take these calls, but for the purposes of our tutorial, let's just leave it as available blocks. And then we can also choose to show start times at specific intervals. For example, you can do every 15 minutes, or if you only want your calls to start at the hour, you can also set it to 60 minutes. In this case, let's go ahead and do the 20-minute option since we did set our duration to 20 minutes. All right, so right now it's currently set from 9 to 12, and then gives us a little lunch break, and then from 1 to 5 we're also available to take these calls. And then this availability table also has the pencil and eraser feature, so you can click and drag to draw in your availability, or you can click and erase on currently drawn on sections to erase them. All right, so let's continue. Next, we'll have our scheduling options. You have different settings. For example, if you want to show the time slots in the user's time zone, or if you want to lock it to your specific time zone. In this case, I think I do, since I am a local business here and I only want to do weddings in my area. So let's go ahead and leave that as locked. You can also choose buffers, which just gives you a little bit of padding in between all your appointments, in case you need some time to drive to the location, or in case you need to do some cleanup or prep work before each appointment. You can also set a notice required, which just gives you control on how much time you need before someone can book an appointment and helps you avoid any last minute bookings. And then we also have the per day limit, which lets you say, okay, I only want to take a certain amount of these appointments every single day. In this case, let's just say we only want to do 2. So let's go ahead and continue. And lastly, the free edition comes with a set number of information fields for your customers. In this case, it comes with name, email, phone, address, city, state, zip code, and notes. And you can make them required, or if you just want to display them and leave them as optional, you can too. The paid editions of this plugin do include custom information fields, but since we're just using the free version right now, I think we'll leave this as is. And lastly, it's going to ask us to review our appointment type or review our booking calendar for wedding photography consultations. So as you can see, everything here looks great. And another thing to note, here on the right-hand side where it says booking info, it does give you a bit of information on how to embed these into your website. In this case, you can copy this code and place it anywhere on your web page and the calendar will show up. But in this case, since we're using Elementor, I'll show you an alternate way to embed these that makes it easy and pretty simple and straightforward to embed. All right, so let's click continue. And lastly, it's going to say congratulations. From here, you can try booking an appointment. You can configure more settings, or you can set up another appointment type. But let's go ahead and go to the settings page just to give you a quick overview. So this is the settings. General settings is going to be everything that it auto-detected for us in the setup wizard. You can come back and change it later. We have styles. It lets you change things like the accent color, fonts, background color, etc. And these are going to be the defaults that you set for the plugin. I'll show you later that you can override these defaults using the Elementor settings. Next we have translations. It does include a few popular translations like German, French, and Spanish. Next we have advanced scheduling options. This comes more in handy when you want to tailor your availability a little further. It also comes in handy if you want to create unique calendars in your plugin, because right now each one is dependent on each other because it's assuming that you're a single person running all the calendars and you can't be double booked between them. And next we have the notification settings. Right now the plugin comes with 4 default messages, and you can come in here and edit the subject message. You can edit which appointment type or calendar is tied to it. You can edit the triggers for it, and you can choose who it's sent to. The notification settings also let you pull information directly from the appointments. For example, if you click here on this little mail icon, it lets you select admin email if you want to also send this to the admin. And then if you click on these little T icons, you can see that you can pull in a bunch of different information and values from the appointment itself. For example, if you want to customize the message to include the customer's name, or if you want to include your refund policy, etc. And so let's go back to the settings. The free edition or the free plugin also includes blackout dates. So in case you need to take a whole week off for vacation, it'll block off all your calendars in one go. And then lastly, we do have the calendar events. Mostly used for Google Calendar Sync, but it does offer you the ability to edit the event that users can download from the confirmation page after they book an appointment, since this is available in all the editions. So you can change the event title, the location, and then the details that users see when they save it to their Google Calendar on that confirmation page. Anyway, so let's go over to the Appointments tab. So this is where all your bookings are going to show up, and there's a few different settings here. Like you can look at past appointments, you can search the date ranges, you can filter through them as well. You can also book an appointment back here as an admin. And then we have the appointment types. This is where you can edit all your calendars and add new ones as well. And lastly, if you need any help, you can also contact the support team from here. Just press this button and it'll directly send them an email for you. And that's pretty much it. So now that we have our scheduling plugin and our calendar set up, let's go ahead and start building our page. So going over to our pages, here on our WordPress dashboard, the first thing I like to do is I like to go ahead and just delete the sample page because I want to just make a brand new one from scratch. WordPress usually also includes this little privacy page, which in this case I'll just trash it too. It's fine. And so now let's go ahead and create our new homepage. So click Add New, and it's going to give you a little bit of advice on how to use this little block editor. But I'm just going to go ahead and get started. And what I want to do is make my homepage. And I don't need to use any of this editor for right now. Let's just go ahead and edit with Elementor. Alrighty, so starting off, I want to head over to my settings here on my page. And what I want to do first is I want to hide the title because I don't want it to say homepage. And then I also want to switch over to the canvas layout. And that should get rid of those really big clunky images of the logo. And let's go ahead and click Save Options, that little down arrow, and let's go ahead and save that draft. And just to give you a quick overview of what I'm trying to set up right now, I want to create my little header here at the very top, just to include my logo and my business name. I want to create a section for my hero. So anytime somebody lands on my page, I want them to know exactly what I'm offering. I also want to add in a section of the services that this business offers. Next, I want to add in a booking section. And lastly, as a little footer for the page, I want to include general information about the location and business hours, as well as social media links. Alrighty, so with that in mind, let's go ahead and start building this. Alright, so the first thing I want to do is I want to create a brand new section. So here on the page itself, I can use this new add a new section button, or I can add a template, which we can get into here in a bit. But let's go ahead and add a new section, and it's going to give me options for what structure I'm looking for. You can always change the structure later, but in this case, I do want to set just a one panel structure like this. And what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and add an image so that I can have my little logo here at the very top, just like that. And here on my edit image panel, let's go ahead and add in the image of my logo. Alrighty, so this looks very, very big. So let's go over to the style settings, and I want to set the max width for this to, let's say, something like 50 pixels. Oh, that's a little tiny, maybe something like 75. And I think that looks good. If you look closely, what I did is I used this little drop down to choose the units that I want to use. In this case, the PX is for pixels. You can also do percentage of your section. EM and REM are units based on the size of your fonts. You can also do VW, which stands for viewer width. And the next thing I want to do is I want to make sure it's aligned to the left-hand side of my content area. And then next, I want to go ahead and add a header to add in the name for this. So the name of the business is called Faded Memories. And I do want to leave it as an H2 because typically you want to use the H1 for the hero tagline. So I'll show you that here in a second, but Faded Memories, and then I have my camera here as well. And what I want to do is I want to make it so that this camera and this heading are listed on the same line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my camera. I'm going to go to the Advanced tab, and I'm going to adjust this width setting right here. Instead of using the default one, let's go ahead and use inline. And then I'm going to do the same for the heading so that they're both in line. So same thing, I clicked the heading, went to the Advanced tab, and I'm going to adjust the width so now that they're in line. As you can see, it's not exactly how I want it to be. This is way too far up. I want it to be centered with this icon or this logo. So I'm going to click vertical line center, and that should bring it back down. All right, so I think that looks pretty good, and I'm pretty happy with how that looks right now. All right, so next section, let's go ahead and make this into 2 columns. Here's where I'm going to add my hero or my H1 heading. So let's go ahead and make it into a H1, and that's automatically going to pull in my styles. And let me copy paste what I have written already here into the title area. All right, so it says capture your special day with Faded Memories. So now that we have that set up, let's go ahead and add in a text area to kind of add in more details on what this business does. And since we don't want it to be this big, let's go ahead and switch over from visual to text because it looks like it's bringing in the styles from my notes. So I'm going to replace that really quick. And so now I have my header, I have some text to further explain what the business does. And now I want to add in a button. So a little call to action. When somebody lands on my page, they know exactly what I want them to do. In this case, I want them to book a consultation. And we won't add the link in yet, just yet, because we don't have our booking section ready, but we'll come back to that. And then here on the right-hand column, I want to go ahead and add an image, just like that. And then we're going to go ahead and choose our image. So let me upload some of the images that I have prepared for this tutorial. All right, so I'm going to use this very first one here, just a sprawl of all the Polaroids. I love how this looks right now, but let's go ahead and center the content of this left-hand column. So I'm going to click on that, and here we're editing the column, and I don't think I've mentioned this earlier, but if you click on the section, you can edit the section layout, the style, advanced as well, and then you can do the same thing for the columns. So in this case, I'm going to select the column and I want to align it to the middle. So here where it says vertical line, let's choose middle. And so that will make sure it's always going to be centered here in my column. So let's continue onto our next section. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and add in a section to showcase some of these service offerings and information. So I'm going to add one with 3 because I have something prepared with 3 sections. Let's go ahead and add in a heading, a text editor element, and we can also add in an image. And what I want to do is I want to click copy. I'm going to paste into each one. Alright, so I accidentally made more than I needed, so I'm going to delete the ones that are empty. And I'm going to click delete. So right click onto the column and click delete. Alright, so now I have what I was looking for. And what I actually want to do is make this a little interesting. So kind of like a little zigzag pattern. And then I'm going to paste in all the content that I have prepared for this. Alrighty, so I think this looks pretty great. The only thing I don't like is that it feels a little uncentered. So I'm going to do that same thing where I go into each column and just make sure they're all center aligned in the middle. So I think that looks a little bit more cohesive. Another thing that kind of bothers me is that I wish there was more space between this hero section and then this section. So what we're going to do is I'm going to select the section and I'm going to go ahead and open the advanced tab. And what I want to do is add in some margin between those sections. So I have it set to pixels. So let's go ahead and add in 100 pixels and see how that looks. So actually I think that looks pretty good. That gives it a little bit more breathing room. And so it also added it to the bottom, so anything I add here below is going to have a little more space as well. And so I like how that looks, so let's continue to the next section. Alrighty, so for this next section, it's going to be like a little about section, so let's add in 2 columns. Alright, so let's go ahead and drag in our headings here. And what I like to do is I like to stack the headings like this. I think it looks pretty neat. So instead of adding an H2 twice, let's do an H3. I think that looks pretty nice. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in the text for this section right below it. And I think actually I'll go back and adjust this a little bit. So if I click into the column, I think these are too spaced out. So clicking onto the column, I can edit the space between all the widgets. By default, it's set to 20, but let's try 5. And then on the other column, let's go ahead and add an image. And here's a picture of the photographer. And I'm going to go ahead and center this again. So put that in the middle. Since I already have this kind of layout where the text is on the left and the image is on the right, I think I'm going to go ahead and swap these. So to do that, you can always drag the column and flip it onto the other side. Now that I have that in place, we've come to our booking section. We're going to add in a 1-column section just like that. And because we're using Simply Schedule Appointments, it should have added a brand new widget or element for us to use. So if you just type in appointments, it'll bring up these 2 new elements. So this one is called an upcoming appointments element and is schedule an appointment. And just to give you a heads up, the upcoming appointments is only for logged in WordPress users. So if you have a membership site where people actually log into your website, they can see their upcoming appointments that they've scheduled with you using this element. But for this tutorial, we're only going to be using the schedule an appointment element, and I'm going to drag it into place just like that. Alrighty, so this is what it looks like by default. And we're going to change the styles here in a little bit, but just to get started, here in the content, it gives you the option to select your appointment type. In this case, we only have one, so all is going to be the same as just selecting this. So I'm going to go ahead and just put that, just in case if I add another calendar, it's not going to automatically get added here, unless I manually add it. So let's make sure that's correct. And then let's move over to the style settings, because right now it's set to green by default. That's just the color that comes with the plugin, but let's go ahead and make some changes here. So our accent color, I want it to be a red, just like that. And then our background color, I want it to match this background. I should have made it a global color, but I didn't. So let me switch over to the site settings really quick. and make sure that it's a global color. All right, so background. So here is my global color, and I'm gonna go back to the global color settings, and I'm gonna go ahead and add a new one. Let's name it the background beige. And then I'm gonna add in the hex code for that and update it. All right, so now when we exit our site settings and scroll down to the very bottom and go back to editing our calendar, when we select the background color, we can have our background beige. And I believe it takes a second for that to settle in. After we publish it, it'll start kicking in. But then our font family, let's go ahead and add in our special elite font. I think that looks really cute. And oh, it looks like it kicked in already. And then you can add in padding in case you need more space around this element in general. Alrighty, so I think that looks pretty cute. If I hover over it, I can see the different styles here. And just like that, we have a booking calendar in place to go with our website. Alrighty, so now we'll do our very last section, which is just a little footer with some social links. So let's go ahead and add a brand new section here. And what I want to do is actually change the color of this to give it a little bit more contrast. So clicking on the section, if we go to the styles and click the background types, let's choose a different color. So let's try this blue, and I think that looks pretty good. And what I actually want to do is probably bring in some of the same elements here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this column and then paste it back in here. All right, so I copied my column in, but I now have this blank column, so I'm going to delete it. And so I have this text, but it's the same exact blue that I have before. So let's go ahead and select that and change the style to have a white, or you can even make it the beige, but I think let's go with white instead. Next, I want to add in some social icons. After there we go, and then we can left align it, and you can go in and change the icon. You can change the color if you want to use a custom color. So let's go ahead and do our light blue for all of these. Add in the links to those from here. Select whether you want rounded, squared, circle. Let's go with circle, and you can choose whether you want to show those into multiple columns or not. And then you can also adjust the styling from here, how big these appear. Want to go a little smaller. You can add in the padding between them, rows, gap, etc. You can also change the hover animation and set more advanced settings here as well. And I think the last thing I want to do is probably just add in, I guess the location. So I can drag in a little Google Maps. Yeah, let's just leave it at London. I'll leave it in London. Probably zoom in a little further. I'll leave this, I guess I'll just leave the style as is. And you can change the height of this and choose how big it shows up. 274 is fine. And then the last thing I want to do too is I want to give this a little bit more cushion within the blue area. So whereas before we added in the margin, this time let's go ahead and add in some padding. I'm going to unlink the values, and what I want to do is I want to add 100 pixels. That's too much. Let's add in 50. Okay, 50 pixels is good. And then at the very bottom, maybe the bottom we do 100. That's perfectly fine. Now that we've covered every single section in our page, the last thing I want to do is make sure that this book a consultation button is set up correctly. And so what I want to do is I'm going to click into the section where my booking calendar is placed. And what we're going to do is we're going to head over to the advanced section, and then we want to go and add an CSS ID. So we're going to type in anything you want really, but I'm going to type in booking, and then we're going to scroll all the way up to the top where our button is located, click on our button, and then here where it says link, we're going to leave this pound sign right there, and then we're going to type in booking. And so what that's going to do is anytime somebody clicks on this, it's going to scroll the page down to our booking calendar section. Anyway, so let's go ahead and publish this and see what our page looks like right now. All right, so it says your page is live. Let's have a look. All right, so right now this is what it looks like. So we have our little services area, our about area, and then we have our calendar. So if we click through here, that's what it looks like. And then here's our little footer. And if you ever need to edit anything here, you can always click Edit with Elementor. And I think I also forgot to show you how you can make this responsive. So if you swap or you click on this little responsive mode button here at the very bottom, you can always check out how it looks on tablet and on mobile. So on tablet, this is a little preview of what it looks like. And some things I like to keep in mind too, especially for like sections like this where it's a little more picture heavy or have like pictures involved. Sometimes you may need to swap the order of them. So if you click advanced on that specific column and then click on responsive, you can hide some of these elements. You can make sure that they are reversed, for example. You can also go in and start setting different settings. So anything that shows this little tablet icon next to it is something that you can adjust when going down the screen sizes. For example, if I wanted to center these as I start going down in screen sizes, you can see that the alignment has this little tablet, and if I wanted to center it, I can just click on that, but you'll see that my mobile is not affected. Here on mobile, it's still aligned to the left. It's only after I switch to tablet mode that it starts centering it for me. So again, anything that has that little tablet icon, you can adjust for the different screen sizes. So you can see you can change the width, height, etc. And just make sure to give it one last review every single time you make any changes, just to make sure it's still usable and friendly in the different for different devices. Anyway, let's go ahead and update that just so you can see the booking button in action. So if I click book consultation, it drags me all the way to the very bottom and I can start booking my appointment. And once we book an appointment, it will give you a little consultation. Your customer can click the Save to Calendar button and they can add it to Google Calendar and you have control over what shows up for them. As you can see here, they also have a few other options too, like they can edit information, reschedule, cancel this appointment, or schedule a new one. Scheduling a new one will just take them back to the initial interface. Alrighty, so the last thing we want to do to make sure that this shows up as our homepage every single time somebody visits our website domain, head over to the Settings tab and click where it says Reading. And from here, it's going to give you a few different settings. For example, it's giving you your homepage displays, and you get to choose whether you want your latest posts to display or if you want a static page. So let's switch over to static page settings, and where it says homepage, let's choose the page that we had named home. And then I think we're okay to ignore the rest of these settings. When you're done, just click save. So now anytime you visit your homepage or visit the mydomainaddress.com page on its own, it looks just like this. So anytime somebody visits this page or this domain, this is what they're going to see. I think for the last portion of this video, I'm just going to show you how you would manage that appointment now that it's come in. So going back to our WordPress dashboard, we head over to the appointments page. And from here, you'll see that we have a new appointment show up here. So if you click on that and click on View Appointment Details, you'll get an overview of all the different information here. For example, all the customer information that was input. You can see what page it was booked on, who booked it. In this case, I was already logged in, so it's saying that I booked it as this customer email. And then you can also cancel or edit as a customer or delete it. I mean, Elementor is a huge and very powerful plugin. It's really complex and really an infinite number of things that you can set up, like blogs or e-commerce stores, learning platforms, social networks, etc. But I mean, for the sake of this video and just to show you what you can do with the free Elementor plugin, the free Simply Schedule Appointments plugin, to replace platforms like Calendly, I hope you got some ideas and were able to learn something from this. And we work with the Simply Schedule Appointments plugin, so if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.